to the DataStack Show Shop Talk, where Costas and I talk shop. Costas, it's been a while since we've done one of these. Lots has happened. I have a new baby in my household, so that's kept me away from the microphone for a little bit. But this is exciting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I miss freestyling with you, so let's do it again.
One of the interesting things about the primary interface and ergonomics of ChatGPT is that it's one, I think it's amazing because it's just so familiar, right? It's just such a, it's actually almost, 10 years ago, it's like, the most popular, like the most widely adopted, like AI LLM is going to be like a text exchange. I mean, it almost sounds crazy when you step back and think about it, but brilliant from an interface standpoint. One of the things that's really interesting about presenting a bunch of options as search results that have some sort of ranking that's at least nominally transparent to the end user who executed the search is that you're presenting some level of choice. One thing that's very interesting about the chat interface is that when you put in a specific query, the results are largely singular, right? And so you're actually not presented with a lot of choice. And that really, in some ways, to return to the accountability question, what's really interesting about presenting choice is that there's more accountability for the user because they have to decide, right? Like I'm offering you a variety of things and I'm applying some weight that may or may not be transparent to you, but you ultimately have to decide what you believe to be sort of the best match. But it's very linear, and you're getting a pretty singular response. How do you think that causes? I mean, I think it caused. That's one of the roots of the issues of accountability, right? Is that it's almost a binary choice. Like, do I trust this or do I not? And I don't have. There's no surrounding context that gives me a tool set with which to make that decision.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think it's even like worse than that, because even like the same question, if you ask like the ChatGPT, like it might generate like a different response, right? Like there is like this, it's not as deterministic, let's say, as it is like when you search like on Google, right? Like in Google, if you put like a keyword, like pretty much they are going to get like the same results all the time, right? With the ChatGPT, like that's not the case. And I think it's one thing like and that's like where things like I think are getting like quite interesting when it comes to integrating it with products and trying to productize it, right? Because how do you account for that, especially in use cases where critical decisions are made, right? Like if, let's say I don't know, like let's say I'm a doctor and I'm using like ChatGPT like to summarize stuff, right? How can we build like a user experience, a product that it will help the doctor to do the summarization, but at the same time will safeguard both the model and the doctor from interpreting like the wrong information, or like making mistakes that it's like interpreting like hallucinations, like for example, let's say, which is like a word that like pretty much like everyone I guess like have heard already about like large language models. So I think that's like the interesting part, and like that's why I'm very excited, and I think like the people who should be like extremely excited about AI and especially LLMs are product managers. I think there's like a very new modality that is given to them, a very new tool, which is almost like completely uncharted territory right now. And I think there's a lot of space for creativity in like product design and management to make like some very, very interesting and create new types of experience there.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. So I almost, this is distilling it down to like 2 levels, which is not actually reality. But reality is a construct, so it doesn't matter, and I'm going to roll with it. So
we live in the Matrix, right? Like,
yes, I think that there will be. Actually, I rewatched. That was on in the hospital when the baby was born, and I forgot how good of a movie that was. It was. I remember watching it for the
first
first
one.
time. Yeah, the first one. Yeah, like
Yeah,
unbelievable.
The first one was amazing.
Yeah, but so one thing that is a little bit disappointing to me about the hype cycle is that you mentioned it earlier. This is going to drastically accelerate the amount of human creativity that can be put into jobs by doing things like pulling information out of PDFs and summarizing it, right? I mean, if you mentioned the medical industry, right? I mean, there are entire like sections of publicly traded companies that have armies of people who go through PDFs and manually like copy information from a PDF into like some other system, right? I mean, that is wild to think about, right? And it's like, okay, those are creative human beings. If we can remove that from them and allow them to like, attack different problems, like that, to me, the first wave of the types of things that this will do will actually be like pretty utilitarian like that, and they will just unlock a bunch of bandwidth, which to me is extremely exciting. I know there's concern about job loss, but I'm with you. I'm actually not concerned about that, because I think that it will free up human creativity, which will be a net benefit to society, that's pretty exciting to me. But then I think once a number of those problems are solved, and even now, what people like to talk about more is the tricky thing. Should this LLM be able to make a diagnosis for a doctor? And where is the jurisdiction, from the doctor and from the patient? And how do you regulate that? And, that's where things get really, really tricky. And that's where people tend to focus the conversation, because they're like, what's going to happen? Is this thing going to like wrongly diagnose your disease? But to your point way earlier, there's going to be monumental changes for things that are not that exciting, like from a news cycle standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Actually, I think there is I keep like sharing this insight, because I don't know, it was like very, very surprising for me when I experienced it. But I think like it's a glimpse to the future of like how AI is going to be, like, in my opinion, like implemented, and like how we are going to embed it in our everyday life. So I don't know, like, I guess everyone is familiar with Invisalign, right? Even if they haven't like used it, like they are probably know what it is. If you go through like the process of doing a treatment with Invisalign, you are going to notice something if you pay attention. Okay, the whole process can happen without actually have a doctor there. Like, you don't need the doctor. Like, you don't, like, even what like the doctor is doing when you go there, like at the beginning, it's something that like you can pretty much do like on your own. Like, you scan your teeth, they take these scans with a phone, by the way, you can do it, feed it to the algorithm, and the algorithm comes up with a treatment, and the treatment is then fed into like a 3D printer. They print the Invisaligns, the molds, and they send them to you, right? But no one does that, right? Like, we always go either to a dentist or like an orthodontist, and we go like through this process. And the reason we do that is because the modality is like so different that like humans would never like trust that, right? Like, it will take time to get to the point where you're like, I'm going to put something in my mouth for like the next 6 months that is completely generated by a machine. And it is completely generated by a machine. the doctor there is there to take care of like, okay, some cases that like the edge cases of the algorithm or like complications, right?
Yep.
And most importantly, to make you feel safe and trust to the process, okay?
Yep.
Because you are interacting with a human, right?
Yep.
Now the benefit, did like the orthodontists like lost their jobs? No, just that like more and more people at the end got access to this kind of treatment in lower prices, and they scaled
Yep.
their jobs because now they can, in their like offices, they can have, I don't know, like 5x like the patients that they had, right?
Yep.
I think that's what is going to happen like with other professions that you have like lawyers, like interacting with the public sector, like all these insurance, insurance claims, right? Like all that stuff. We will just be able like to do more. And that's going to be like, in my opinion, like a positive sum game at the end, compared to the probably negative sum game that like crypto was.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay, one last thing. What have you built have you built anything with an LLM yet?
Yeah, I'm using them like a lot. I mean, I'm using them. Yeah, like I'm not only
Sorry,
LLMs.
beyond just like a personal, because like I think a lot of people who are interested in it use it for different things on a daily basis by just sort of inputting a bunch of prompts. But have you like, I think you've built a couple end-to-end things on it, right?
Yeah. No. I'm building some stuff. Yeah, like for example, like one of the ways that like, and it's funny because you mentioned something similar. Like for example, I wanted like to build like a synthetic data generator, and especially when you have like low cardinality data that you need there. It can be like super helpful because it can create like much more realistic data. So for example, let's say I want to, even like let's take like the RudderStack event, right? Like if you want to create like synthetic data for like the agent field, right? Instead of like trying to figure out like and putting like just like a chunk of like characters there, yeah, you can get like I don't know,
Oh yeah,
ask
like
for like variation of like 100 of them, and just sample them and like use them like to generate data, right? And you don't have like to continuously do that. Like it's just to seed your data with that because it's also like slow to do it like every time and expensive.
Sure. Yeah.
But it can help like, do these kind of things. I'm using it like to code. Super like useful, especially like I was always like, I was never like the person that enjoyed writing tests. So now it's a pure joy to write tests using like Copilot. I'm doing a lot of I have used like Whisper a lot to do to analyze like the episodes here that we are recording. I'm using Midjourney like to generate some assets for like presentations and stuff like that. Like things that like, okay, like by the way, keep in mind, I can't even like draw like a straight line, right? Like for me, it's like a huge enabler that, I can go there and create something decent. It's not like it's going to be perfect. It will never be perfect. And yeah, like I will need a designer. I will never like substitute the designer. But at the end, the designer can iterate much more on what I'm asking because of these tools, right?
Yeah.
So we can end up like in what I need, like faster. What else have I done? I think these are like the things so far. I'm using it a lot, like while I code, to be honest. Like it's very interesting. It cannot substitute coding, but it changes the experience a lot. Like what has changed is that like I'm not using Stack Overflow anymore.
Yeah,
that much.
I mean, I'm not writing code in the same way that you are, but querying data a lot. I mean, I'm not, you know, I've never had a job where one of my like stated responsibilities was writing SQL. And so, or like regex stuff, you know, and so if you've never done that professionally, and I just haven't spent the time to actually sort of get over the hump of like, you know, figuring out how to structure a query in a way that is efficient and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
It is amazing for that, where it's like, I'm trying to answer a question and I know like the basic structure of how it should look. And it's like, just correct this. It's amazing.
Yeah, the other thing that also like connects with the conversation about like Google, for example, there are like, okay, I've never learned, or there are like specific terminal commands that I keep forgetting exactly like what the parameters be, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems that I have is like I always forget like how to do an SCP. And I used like to just go and Google it because you pretty much get the exact answer when you want it. But what happens is that like people have like gamed the system so much where you are like ending like in a landing page where there is the command and there's so much advertisement on it.
Yeah.
Like so many, like it's so annoying. Like
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
I know
Right?
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So like now instead of doing that, like I'm just asking like the LLM and like it gives me, you know, like the command, and even if it doesn't work, it's close to what I need, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I don't have to go through all that crap of like all these like stupid ads of like.
Yeah, I totally agree. No, it's
So I think like also, you know, like Google in a way also like hurt themselves by like allowing this like to happen. Because at the end, it's all about the experience. It's just like it's the same information. There's nothing creative there.
Totally
It's just that
agree.
like
Yeah.
the experience is like really, really bad, like on Google.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating study in user interface. I totally agree in accessing information. It's also going to be really interesting to see to see how this impacts Microsoft. And kind of what that does in the market with the big players, which will be super fun. Yeah. But all right, well, Brooks is telling us we are at time here, and maybe we'll try to. I don't know. We should we try to like ask an LLM to generate an entire episode around a topic and see if they get our tone and voice?
That would be interesting. We can do some. We can be creative. Let's have like a ChatGPT as guest and see what happens.
That would be fun.
Let's do that.
All right, we'll try it. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us for another Shop Talk. Kostas, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts, even if they're, you know, just a construct. And we will catch you on the next one.